Uncle Robert held his imported beer high in the afternoon sun and cleared his throat. The clinking of silverware stopped. 50 of my closest relatives turned their attention to the patio. "I'd like to propose a toast," Robert announced, his voice booming over the manicured lawn. He looked right at me, a smug, satisfied smile stretching across his tanned face. "To Elena. It takes a lot of guts to chase a foolish dream, and it takes even more to finally admit when you've hit rock bottom. Here's to failing, and here's to finally learning your limits, kiddo." The yard erupted in laughter. My mother chuckled softly, covering her mouth with a linen napkin. My older brother David smirked and tapped his crystal glass against his wife's. They were toasting my supposed bankruptcy. They were publicly celebrating the death of the software company I had spent 4 years bleeding for. I stood by the buffet table, holding a plastic cup of lemonade. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run to my 10-year-old car parked at the end of their long, sweeping driveway. I just slid my hand into my jacket pocket and traced the edge of my phone. What none of the 50 people laughing at me knew was that 4 hours earlier, my phone had buzzed with a voicemail. And by the time I connected it to my mother's Bluetooth sound system, Uncle Robert's little toast was going to cost this family everything they valued. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is the channel for the women who were told they were too ambitious, too reckless, or just too much, and who learned that the best response to cruelty isn't an argument, it's a receipt. If you've ever had to sit through a holiday while your own blood treated your life like a joke, you are in the exact right place. Drop a comment, tell me where you're listening from, and hit subscribe. You'll want to stay for dessert on this one. In my family, worth was measured entirely by the title on your office door and the hood ornament on your car. My father, Arthur, was a senior partner at a corporate law firm in Boston. My brother, David, was a junior partner at a rival firm, tracking to make full partner by 32. I was the glitch in their perfect genetic matrix. I didn't want the corner office, and I hated billing my life in 6-minute increments. I wanted to build something. In my mid-20s, I started writing code in a cramped, unheated studio apartment. I was developing predictive logistics software for the commercial shipping industry. I called it Apex Routing. My family called it Elena's little computer hobby. Whenever I attended Sunday dinners, the condescension was served right alongside the roast beef. My father would ask when I was going to stop playing pretend. My mother would introduce me to her friends as her free spirit, dropping her voice to a whisper, as if creativity was a terminal illness. But the real betrayal, the one that carved a permanent line between us, happened 2 years ago. Apex Routing was gaining traction, but server costs were eating me alive. I hit a wall. I needed a $30,000 bridge loan to keep the platform online for 3 more months while I courted investors. I swallowed my pride and went to my parents. I brought a business plan. I offered them equity. My father didn't just say no, he called a family meeting. He sat me down in the living room with David and my mother, and he dismantled me. He called my business a delusion. He said I was a financial sinkhole.
"We don't fund failure, Elena," my mother had said, inspecting her manicure. "It's time to grow up." I was devastated, but I accepted their no. What I didn't accept, and what I didn't find out until much later, was what they did next. At the time, I was engaged to a man named Mark. Mark was an associate at David's law firm. We had been together for 3 years. 2 weeks after I asked for the loan, Mark came home, packed a suitcase, and broke off our engagement. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just muttered something about financial instability and incompatible futures. I was broken. It took me a year to find out the truth from a mutual friend who had a few too many drinks at a party. My father and David had taken Mark out to a private dinner at a steakhouse downtown. They had warned him that I was going to ruin his credit. They told him my company was a joke, that I was drowning in debt, and that if he married me, the family would absolutely never bail him out. My own father and brother actively sabotaged my future, terrified that my delusions would somehow embarrass them in their social circles. They wanted me to fail so they could be right. So I went completely silent. I moved into an even cheaper apartment. I took freelance data entry jobs at night to pay for my servers by day. For 2 years, I barely spoke to them. I missed holidays, I missed birthdays, but the narrative in the family was already set in concrete. Elena had crashed and burned. She was hiding in shame. That brings us to the annual family reunion. I only went because my grandmother, the one person who occasionally sent me a $20 bill and a handwritten note, had personally asked me to be there for her 80th birthday.
The moment I walked through the iron gates of my parents' estate, the ambush began. David had parked his brand new Porsche prominently in the circular drive. When he saw me step out of my battered sedan, he whistled loudly. "Still driving the antique, El?" David called out, drawing the attention of 2 aunts and a cousin. "Listen, my firm is hiring paralegals if you're finally ready to start earning a real paycheck. I could probably put in a good word." "I'm fine, David," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat. My mother swooped in next. She hugged me, carefully avoiding making contact with my inexpensive jacket. "Oh, sweetheart, you look so tired. Have you been eating? Aunt Patricia was just asking if you needed grocery money." They were feeding on it. My perceived struggle was their entertainment. It validated every arrogant choice they had ever made. After lunch, the escalation moved from sideways comments to a direct assault. My parents pulled me into the kitchen, closing the heavy oak doors behind us. David was standing by the marble island, holding a printed piece of paper. "We're staging an intervention," my mother said, using that soft, weaponized tone she reserved for destroying people. "This little tech phase of yours is officially over. You're 30 years old, Elena. It's embarrassing." David slid the piece of paper across the granite counter. It was a job application. "I pulled some strings," David said, crossing his arms. "It's a receptionist role at my firm. You answer phones, you manage the schedule, you start at $42,000 a year. You fill that out right now and I'll hand it to HR on Monday. But this is the last lifeline you get." I looked at the application. Then I looked at my brother. What David didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my silence over the last 6 months wasn't because I was failing. I was silent because I was operating under an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. 8 months ago, Apex Routing's algorithm had caught the attention of Vanguard Logistics, one of the largest global shipping conglomerates on the planet. Their legacy systems were bleeding hundreds of millions of dollars a year in inefficiencies. My software stopped the bleeding. I hadn't been taking freelance jobs to survive. I had been flying back and forth to Seattle, sitting in glass boardrooms with venture capitalists and acquisitions lawyers. I didn't just sell the software. My mother had a massive, high-end Bluetooth speaker set up on the edge of the patio, playing soft jazz from an iPad. I walked over to the speaker. I didn't rush. I didn't look angry. I picked up the auxiliary cord resting on the table and plugged it directly into the headphone jack of my phone. The jazz music cut out instantly, leaving a sudden, expectant quiet in the yard. "What are you doing?" David snapped, stepping out from the crowd. "Don't ruin the party just because you can't take a joke, Helena." I tapped my screen, hit the speaker icon, and turned the volume dial to maximum. "I'm not ruining the party, David," I said, my voice steady enough to slice glass. "I'm just sharing my life updates, since we're all being so honest today." I pressed play. The deep, unmistakable voice of Marcus Sterling, the ruthless CEO of Vanguard Logistics, boomed across the manicured lawn. "Elena, Marcus here. Just calling to officially congratulate you. Legal just confirmed the wire transfer cleared this morning. $12.4 million is officially in your account. I know Vanguard drove a hard bargain, but your algorithm is going to save us $1 billion over the next decade. So frankly, we got a steal. Welcome to the board of directors, partner. Take the weekend to celebrate. You've earned every penny." The voicemail clicked off. The silence that fell over the yard was absolute. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum that pulled the air straight out of 50 sets of lungs. Nobody moved. Uncle Robert's beer was frozen halfway to his mouth. My mother's face drained of every ounce of color. The tan she had spent 2 weeks in Cabo perfecting suddenly looked like gray ash. 12 million, Aunt Patricia whispered. In the dead silence, it sounded like a gunshot. David's face twisted. Shock morphed violently into aggressive denial. He stepped forward, his hands balling into fists. "That's fake. You hired an actor to record that. Vanguard Logistics? Are you insane? They don't buy startups from nobodies in studio apartments." I looked at my brother, and I let myself smile. Just a fraction. This was the moment I had survived 2 years of ramen and isolation for. "You should really know Vanguard's corporate structure better than that, David," I said smoothly, pacing slowly toward him. "Considering Vanguard Logistics is the parent company of Sterling Shipping." David stopped breathing. His posture shattered. Sterling Shipping was the anchor client keeping David's entire law firm afloat. They made up 60% of his firm's billable hours. It was the account he was desperately trying to manage to secure his partnership.
As part of the acquisition, I continued, making sure my voice carried to the back of the yard. Vanguard gave me a seat on the executive board, which means starting Monday morning, I am part of the steering committee that reviews all vendor contracts, including outside legal counsel. My brother, the man who had convinced my fiancé to abandon me because I was a financial liability, realized in real time that his entire career, his partnership, and his future were now sitting in the palm of my hand. My father pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His hands were shaking. The polished, arrogant senior partner had vanished, replaced by an old man terrified of the power dynamic shifting under his feet. "Elena, sweetheart," my father stammered. "Let's talk about this inside. Just the family. We didn't know." "I know you didn't, Dad," I said. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the crumpled receptionist job application they had tried to force on me in the kitchen, and let it flutter to the grass right at his polished leather shoes. "I won't be needing the admin job," I told him. I didn't yell. I didn't demand an apology, because apologies born out of sudden financial terror aren't real. They're just negotiations. I turned my back on the 50 silent, staring people, walked down the long driveway, and got into my 10-year-old sedan. The engine sputtered once, then caught. I drove through the iron gates and didn't look in the rearview mirror. The fallout over the next month was an absolute masterpiece of panic. David's firm mysteriously lost the Sterling Shipping account 3 weeks later. The Vanguard legal team issued a polite, devastating memo citing a misalignment of corporate vision and values. Without his anchor client, David's partnership track was permanently derailed. He was quietly demoted to a non-equity role. My parents spent weeks blowing up my phone. They left long, tearful voicemails pleading for a chance to reconnect and celebrate as a family. My mother even tried to send an expensive floral arrangement to my old studio apartment, not realizing I had already moved out. I never called them back. I bought a beautiful mid-century house on the coast, paying in cash. I started a venture capital fund specifically designed to back female founders who are told their brilliant ideas are just little hobbies. Sometimes my phone still lights up with an unknown number from a Connecticut area code. I always let it go to voicemail, because I learned that you don't need to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The loudest, most devastating sound you can ever make in response to people who wanted you to fail is the sound of your own uninterrupted success.